Hello guys and welcome back. So last week and in the last video we did about alliances, and we are now going to do about nationalism. So this is another one of the four main causes that caused World War I. Okay, so we know that it spells M.A.I.N, we've done militarism, we've done alliances, we've done imperialism, and we're now on the N, which stands for nationalism. Now, what is nationalism? So nationalism is about being proud of your country and where you come from, and it's a belief that your country should be strong, powerful, and independent. It's often associated with a concept called patriotism, which means very strong and devoted support for your country. Nationalism isn't always a negative thing, but often it becomes this way because countries' efforts to become stronger and to become more powerful can have detrimental, which means worse, impacts on other countries, and they might promote ideas of racial superiority, we're better than they are, which can obviously be a very negative thing. Nationalism promotes the interests of particular countries or nations, which are groups of similar people. The aim of nationalism is usually to make sure the population have self-governance, so they govern themselves and are not controlled by other different people. So if somebody invaded England and ran England, controlled England, and it was no longer controlled by British people or English people, nationalists in the country might want to rise up and push that person out so we can rule ourselves. So there are many different characteristics associated with the idea of national identity and nationalism. And the concept of nationalism, as I said, relies on this national identity that you feel, and you feel that everyone in your nation also has. You belong to a place, okay? Now, they range from all of these things down here. So I'm just going to read through the list for you. We've got ethnicity, culture, geographical location, language, politics, religion, traditions, and a shared history. So when you feel nationalism, you feel some kind of connection to your country because of one of these things. You might identify with the past and things that have happened in your shared history. You might, believe, for example, as somebody who's British, I believe in democracy, and I feel quite strongly about that characteristic because that's my political belief, and I believe that's right. And England, Britain is traditionally a democratic country. Now, if I'd been born somewhere else, maybe if I'd been born in a country where we don't have democracy, I might not identify so much with that political characteristic. And therefore, I might share nationalism or my national identity with other people who believe the same as me, okay? So there's some examples. And we're gonna talk about some of these in terms of some little case studies, just to make it really clear for you. Right, this country has absolutely nothing to do with our course and the causes of World War I, but it's really interesting to look at when we think of the idea of nationalism. So I've put it in here as a little example, just to talk through before we talk about the World War I, so we can compare it and hopefully really kind of embed it in our heads and understand it first. So we're going to talk about Ireland. Now, if I move out the way, we've got a little map here. And this shows Ireland. Now, if you're not sure where it is, it's just to the left of the United Kingdom. So we have the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, and Wales. And then next to it, on the other side, as a separate island, we have the country of Ireland. So yeah, don't get confused. Ireland is an island, we are an island, but Ireland, spelt slightly differently, like this spelling, is also the name of their country. Right. Ireland is currently split into two parts. I don't know if you know that, but it is. The larger bottom section, so you can have a look at the map here, all this green bit here, the dark green section, that is the independent country of Ireland. And that small bit at the top, where I'm pointing now, this kind of yellower bit, that's Northern Ireland, okay, which is a separate country. Northern Ireland is actually a part of the United Kingdom, confusingly enough. So the yellow bit here is actually a part of the United Kingdom, but the rest of it isn't. So the yellow bit, if you live in the yellow bit, you have the Queen as your Queen, you believe in the Queen, and you think that's right, and you get to vote in our elections and things like that. If you live in Ireland, you actually use euros, whereas Northern Ireland use pounds. and you're technically in a completely different country just by stepping over this tiny border here. Okay, so it's really interesting, this country. It's split into two, even though the whole thing is Ireland technically. Now, there are lots of people in the past and today that believe in Irish nationalism. They believe in the idea of being patriotic and strong as an Irish country. They see what's happened in Northern Ireland as foreign rule and foreign interference. And they really want to kind of promote a unity and combine the whole nation together and create one independent Ireland that is completely separate from the United Kingdom. They celebrate Irish culture, which includes, the Irish language, literature, music, and sports. And the reason why we see this split is because we have two different national identities. So people who believe it should all be joined up, that's one national identity, but then we have another national identity, okay? And one of the big differences between these two groups of people is that people who live in Ireland, so not everyone, I don't want to stereotype, but lots of them follow the religion of Catholicism. They're Catholic. And a lot of people that live in Northern Ireland follow the religion of Protestantism. Okay, so there's two different groups of people who want different things. If you live up here, you want to stay separate and you want to stay part of the United Kingdom. But if you live in here, you want it to all join up. Now, there are some people who live in Northern Ireland, just to make it really confusing, that also want to join up. But we have one country with two different groups of people, okay? And they have different histories, they have different traditions, they have different religions, and they feel differently about who they are. Some people in Ireland feel Irish, some people feel Irish, but also part of the United Kingdom. So this is an example of ethnic nationalism. Belonging to your nationalism is defined by belonging to an ethnic identity, language, or religion. And it's very clearly divided on who belongs and who doesn't. The things that make up this identity and characteristics can be identified in people. If I interviewed someone from Ireland, I could quite quickly work out whether they lived in Northern Ireland or normal Ireland, this bit, the central bit here, okay? So that's Ireland. Two groups of people, even though they both live in Ireland, who feel very differently about religion, about, geographically, who they should be aligned to as a country and how their country should be drawn. Okay, the next little case study we're going to do is this country. And you might recognize what I'm talking about just from this, but if I move over, we can see we're talking about America, the United States of America. Now, this is a different example than the one we just had with Ireland. Because of its history as a nation that was colonized and due to a very open door policy that America had, especially in the 1920s and before that, the 1900s, we have lots and lots of immigrants that came into America. So the USA has kind of become a home to a huge variety of ethnicities, religions, and cultures. Despite that, it still has a very strong national identity. So you might think, how can you have a national identity when everyone comes from different places and everyone has different religions and everyone has different languages, things like that. But they do have a very strong national identity still. And this national identity, rather than being based on, where you were born or the language you speak, is based on shared values and beliefs. And for years, American policy towards nationalism and national identity is whether you subscribe to their civil values and political beliefs. Do you believe in American freedom and the strength that and if you do believe in American freedoms, then you're welcome to come in, regardless of where you come from, the color of your skin, or the religion that you practice. Now, this is represented in a very famous concept we call the American dream. Anyone can come to America and they can succeed. So America doesn't have the same as Ireland has, where Ireland matters if you were born in the north or in the south of Ireland, you have very different national identity. In America, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, as long as you subscribe to their belief system. Now, fundamental beliefs, human rights, strong feature of American nationalism, and the idea of the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. So in America, we have a thing called civic nationalism. And this is a nationalism that doesn't kind of attribute itself to physical traits, or, you know, what you look like or what the color of your skin is, but the values you choose to believe in. Okay, so it's more about values rather than where you come from. Okay, so now we've explored some of those kind of examples as ideas. Let's go back to World War One and see if we can work out why World War One, why nationalism helped to cause World War One. Okay, so firstly, we're going to consider the idea of imperialism and how imperialism links. So imperialism again means building an empire. How imperialism links with nationalism directly. Okay, and to do this, we're going to focus on Great Britain. Now, the idea of building an empire and bringing your way of life to other people is wrapped up in the idea of nationalism. You know, the idea of we're going to go in, we're going to help these people, we're going to give them our culture, we're going to rescue them, and we're going to make their lives better. And that's really something that Great Britain subscribed to. You know, we're going to go in and help them. And I've just put behind me these flags of all the countries that they kind of did this to. And you can see that they have mini Union Jacks in the corner. And that's a really important, you know, piece of evidence there that Britain really felt superior almost to these other countries. They kind of went in and said they were trying to save. So, because they're successful in expanding their empire, this reinforces this idea of their own strength and righteousness. Righteousness means kind of, you know, I'm right to do this. So they really believe they were doing the right thing. They're fighting in wars to try and expand their empire and deal with colonial issues. And because of all of this, because of all this confrontation that they go through, and because the fact they win quite a lot of the time, they believe that they're the best and that they have the best military and the best navy. And it reinforces this idea of British nationalism. We're the best because we're spreading our British culture, our British religion, our British way of life all over the world. And you are really lucky that you get to experience it, okay? One example of this, completely irrelevant to the war, but in India, for example, you know, the British went in and they tried to put on India British culture, and it led to lots and lots of problems in the 1800s. You can research that if you like. But anyway, so that's Britain. Right, I'm back in Germany now, and nationalism in Germany is also really important to look at and to understand. Now, Germany are slightly different to Britain because they only unified as a country in much more recent years than Britain did. Britain was always, you know, well, England was always a country, and then we united with Scotland and Wales and things. But Germany used to be made up of lots of little countries, and it only united in 1871. Because of this, the leaders of Germany are really keen to try and promote nationalism in Germany and trying to make everyone feel German, to try and encourage the fact that they're now one country together, rather than these individual territories and principalities, which mean, you know, little areas with princes. It's taught to children on the school curriculum, so it's so important that they kind of want to drill it in children's heads. You know, we are German, we are one country, and this nationalism is really, really, really important. They use lots of propaganda to try to teach children that Germany is the best. Now, propaganda means where you show people messages and posters and things like that, which try to promote an idea which might not necessarily be true. And they really try to kind of show that they're the strongest in Europe, even though arguably they're not. They see the success of the British Empire and believe Germany should have the same opportunities as this. So this resentment towards Britain and this belief that they're equal and as good as Britain is what ties in to German nationalism. Right, the last type of nationalism we need to talk about is this, and I've talked about it quite a lot before, Pan-Slavism, okay? So the southern Slavic countries like Serbia, Albania, Bosnia, and other countries like that believe in the idea of being one united Slavic nation, a people in southern Europe. They see the borders of their countries as kind of arbitrary lines. Now, the word arbitrary means just drawn on, you know, not real, they don't really matter. And most of them feel like they should be united. They have very similar ethnicities, they speak very similar languages, and they share a very similar history. So they feel like they share a national identity, even though they're in different countries. This makes them feel like they want to join up and be one nation altogether. Now, Russia also supports this idea. He supports the idea of Pan-Slavism and feels an affinity, so they feel a relationship with these countries. It's particularly opposed by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We've heard that before, because Austro-Hungary have power over some of these Slavic nations, like Bosnia and Herzegovina, and so they don't want this to happen. Because of this, many young Slavs joined radical nationalist groups like the Black Hand Gang, the group that assassinated Franz Ferdinand, and they believe this is going to kickstart some kind of conflict and war to try to make this united Slavic nation happen. This is a type of nationalism, and it's based on ethnicity, and they want to join up together. Now, the trigger for World War I can therefore be seen as resulting from conflicting ideas about nationalism and national interest. Nationalism can be seen as a reason for why lots of the alliances that existed were made. For example, Russia and Serbia joined because of ethnic Slavism. Germany and Austria-Hungary are very similar ethnicity-wise, and they both want to unite against Britain, and France because they feel weaker than them. And nationalism also links up with imperialism and with militarism, because it's the reason why Germany built up their empire, to try to be stronger and to try and combat Britain. So basically, in summary, Britain have nationalism, they believe they're the best, and that's what's pushed them to develop their empire all over the world, and they believe, and that's what Germany becomes very jealous of. Britain have also built up their weapons, their navy, because of this colonial empire, and therefore that provokes Germany. Now, Germany also believe that they need to have more power and strength, so they try to combat that. And then we also have Pan-Slavism, where all these countries down here want to join up, which is opposed to by Austria-Hungary, who join with Germany because they are similar, they have a national identity, and then everyone gets involved in war, like we looked at with our alliances. Okay, so that's why it's a really important factor in the outbreak of war.